Good morning or good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is to give everyone an introduction to Axcelerate 5. My name is Neil Etheridge. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Recommind, and joining me today is Hal Marcus, who is a Product Marketing Manager here around our e-discovery solutions. What I want to do is do a quick frame of introduction to give a bit of the history of the evolution of our e-discovery software, and then look at really some of the design goals and principles around Axcelerate 5. And then we're going to jump into a few different demonstrations. So if we go back across the history of innovation at Recommind, going all the way back to the early 2000s, you can see that we have really been able to add very advanced capabilities into our different product offerings. And of course, our entry into e-discovery, starting with our first release of Axcelerate in the 2006-2007 timeframe. And throughout this evolution of our product portfolio, and specifically our e-discovery offering, we've continued to build on adding advanced analytics and machine learning capabilities into our suite, with the goal being of using analytics and machine learning to better connect people and information. Of course, we help pioneer predictive coding and really bring this technology to the forefront of e-discovery and act as a highly disruptive technology in this marketplace. As we move forward throughout our innovation timeline, we've added other great technologies such as phrase extraction, dynamic joins, entity extraction. And today we'll be talking about new advanced analytics and visual analytics such as HYPERGRAPH. When it came to designing Axcelerate 5, we wanted to take a really good long look at the e-discovery market. And as we discovered, the market seemed to really splice in two different directions. And what you see over here on the left-hand side is our own slicing of our analysis of that market. Of course, it looks quite a lot like a Gartner Magic Quadrant. It is not. Fortunately, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, we are up in the top right-hand corner. However, as we slice the market here on these two axes, we found that the top right corner was actually empty. And that's because vendors seem to take one of two approaches, really embedding deep, advanced technology and capabilities into the platform, or focusing very much on the ease of use or the user experience. However, when designing Axcelerate 5, we felt we could evolve from just bringing this very rich technology in a good user interface to really generating the very best ease of use in the marketplace. And this really led to creating this ultimate combination of the power that we've been famous for many, many years, with a new level of simplicity and user experience not yet seen before in this marketplace. And we believe that with Axcelerate 5, we have achieved our goal of moving into this unique zone of being this unique combination of power and simplicity. So how have we done that? Axcelerate 5 is, of course, a complete e-discovery platform that is available on demand, spanning all aspects of an e-discovery review workflow. The whole design principles behind Axcelerate 5, as mentioned, was around ease of use and being able to harness all of that power in context and in real time, dependent on the task at hand or the user using the system. And with this goal of simplicity and making these very powerful analytics and machine learning capabilities at anyone's fingertips, the goal was to ensure that Axcelerate 5 could add significant value to any case, regardless of case type or regardless of case size. And hopefully today, as we walk through this webinar, we'll be able to demonstrate to you how that is the case. So one of the key new innovations within Axcelerate 5 is a brand new user interface. This interface has been designed literally from the ground up to create this just world-class leading user experience. The interface itself is designed using the latest web standards and web technologies, specifically HTML5. And this has allowed us to really innovate even in some of the less noticeable areas within our space, which is Axcelerate 5 is completely browser and platform agnostic. Whether I'm running Internet Explorer on Windows, whether I'm running Chrome on a Mac, or even on a tablet. And we've removed the need for any form of browser plugins, downloads, dependencies, applets, ActiveX controls, or anything like that, while still creating this very rich, very interactive experience. Also, the whole Axcelerate 5 user interface has become adaptive and dynamic. So dependent on screen real estate, user preference, or the task or activity at hand, the user interface will dynamically change and adapt to present just the right pieces of information and just the right pieces of functionality at the right time. The key benefits that were driving the design of Axcelerate 5 really broke into three distinct areas. One was being able to use advanced interactive analytics to ensure the discovery of key insights within a case or key documents within a case as early as possible. And this ensures that case strategy can be planned earlier in a much more effective way. And you'll see this demonstrated today through visual technologies such as HYPERGRAPH and the ability to explore concepts in a new visual form. Another key benefit was around review efficiency. Of course, predictive coding has been a huge benefit into improving review efficiency by being able to both prioritize the documents that are reviewed and making significant reductions in the volume of documents that need to be human reviewed. However, in Axcelerate 5, we wanted to build on that and even make the experience for the reviewer second to none. Again, with the goal of driving review efficiency, both on the documents that can be computer reviewed and on the documents that will be looked at by humans. And today, again, you'll see a review experience that we believe is second to none. Finally, is confidence and control. So when applying advanced analytics and machine learning to the e-discovery review process, we want to ensure that at all times, the lawyers, the review team, remains in control of the decisions that are being made and the progression of the review. And in addition to remaining in control, we wanted to create complete visibility and transparency into the entire review process and be able to very quickly understand where we are at any given time. And again, you'll see this more as we go through the demonstration today. So with that, I want to hand over to Hal to talk a little bit about how we're going to be framing the demo and the roles that we'll walk through today. Hal?
Thanks, Neil. We're not going to do death by PowerPoint here. I will hand you back over to Neil in just a minute to go into the live product. But this is such a large undertaking that happened here at Recommind. It's very unusual for an established software company to so completely revisit its platform and re-engineer from the ground up. So we wanted to just give you some framing of how we try to think about the more than 300 feature enhancements and new feature benefits as they were developed. We tried to keep a very strong focus on who the end user is and what they need to get out of the product at any given time. So we focused on three key roles. These don't necessarily align exactly with the titles at law firms or organizations, but functionally, these are kind of the three areas we wanted to focus on. The first is the subject matter expert, second, the reviewer, and the third, the case manager. So let's talk first about the subject matter expert. This is someone who is knowledgeable about the case and the objectives they're trying to achieve, focused on getting to the key facts earlier to find out what cards are in the hand so you can strategize accordingly, and someone who is eager to prioritize and focus the review efforts. Now, we have an image there of someone who just exudes confidence and control, a perfect client for our new platform. So we tried to focus on what exactly are the kinds of tools that are going to be beneficial to the person in this role. And the first we want to call out is HYPERGRAPH, which Neil mentioned earlier. So much of what you're looking at in terms of your data these days is email originated. Either they are emails themselves or they're attachments to emails, things that are discussed across emails. So having greater capabilities and easy visualizations to analyze massive quantities of email is a really powerful tool, being able to see the interactions and the patterns that emerge from the communications, and also being able to use those for filtering purposes, for internal investigations, even above and beyond filtering down and prioritizing your review. So that's one thing we'll take you through. The next one is our concept browser capabilities. Recommind and Axcelerate have been known for some time for the concept analysis that's done behind the scenes to give you great insight into groupings and organization of your data in meaningful ways. What's new in Axcelerate 5 now is the ability to search and explore through the extracted concepts so that you can follow your thought pattern and find similar topics that could be useful. It's a great way to get right to the documents that you want to prioritize first. So with that, I'll turn you back over to Neil to take you into the live product.
Great, thanks, Hal. So let's switch over now into Axcelerate 5, and we're going to walk through how we can use some of those technologies that Hal just mentioned, as well as giving you a quick introduction to the user interface. So here we are now in the live system, and what you see is the analysis view of the data. So this is where, as the subject matter expert, I can very easily start to explore and analyze and investigate the data at hand. As I did mention, though, the whole Axcelerate interface is very dynamic and very adaptive. So depending on screen real estate or the function at hand, I may need particular panels or particular functions, such as being able to tag documents from here, being able to quickly search across documents from here, and now being able to visualize the data at hand as well. So now as we look down in this bottom panel, I can see a histogram showing me the volume of information over time. And you'll see as we begin to narrow through this data and investigate how powerful these visual analytics actually become. Equally, every panel in the system has multifunction and multi-purpose. So you can see we could do with a single click here, we could switch from being in the histogram mode to now looking at the document in a document viewer. I could very quickly jump back to my visualizations, and I now see my histogram again. Same as we look to the search panel on the left, this allows me to slice and dice through data, but I could quickly jump over to recent searches over time. I could remember there was a search I did 2 days ago, I need to jump back to it, but I forgot to save it. It's going to be sitting here in a rolling audit of all my search history. But the best way to start is, of course, to generate some search history. So the goal here as a subject matter expert is I'm evaluating the Enron data set, looking for some key documents or to gain some key insights around activities related to price fixing. So one of the easiest ways to achieve this is using one of our powerful analytics, which is the ability to extract key phrases from the documents. So as I click on my phrases filter, I now see many, many different key phrases between 2 and 4 words extracted by the engine. And what I want to understand is in what context has the word price been used in this data set. So as I type the word price, I can now see the many different kind of contexts, as I mentioned. And I'm looking for things that may have some kind of relation to price fixing. And of course, the first one here that stands out to me is price volatility. You know, that may be coincidental or it may be directly attributed to some form of activity. As we scroll further through the list, prices in California, not necessarily relevant to what I'm looking for. And as we continue to look down, here's another one that stands out to me, which is price gouging. So now what I've done is seen 2 different contexts that the term price is used related to the issue that I'm investigating. So now what I want to do is press apply and narrow down to that data set. So as I've narrowed in, now you'll see my histogram at the bottom is really giving me some clear indication into the kind of the peaks and valleys around those 2 phrases being discussed. And I can see that really the hottest time is between July 2000 and August 2001. So I simply draw over that particular set of data, and I click in the zone, and we've now just narrowing in on that specific time period. So now that I've done that, I've narrowed down to 885 results. And what I'd like to understand is who has been communicating about price gouging and price volatility. Not just who, but what is the flow of information? What is the flow of communication? And traditional tools would really only allow me to see that in flat lists, just like me clicking on email from right here. But what I want to see is really what is the flow and the trends or the patterns that I see within this communication. So to do that, I simply just say, now display this as a hypergraph. So built right into the platform, built right into the interface is now the ability to visualize this data in many different ways. So the initial hypergraph that I see here is based on domains. This is allowing me to see the flow of information between domains. And while this is very useful, what I would like to see initially is this information by entities or by custodians. So I can now ask the hypergraph to display this now instead as sender and recipient. So as I do that, a brand new hypergraph is built. You also get an idea of just the amazing performance that we see in hypergraph. Again, by it being built straight in, allowing us to create these straight out of our core engine and not having to import, export, or manipulate data in any way. So as we look at the hypergraph, what I can see is there definitely seems to be a person right in the center here related to a lot of the communication around these topics, which is Jeff. Just to give you an idea of what's going on screen, any of the entities you see who are blue, they are purely just recipients in this data set. Anyone who is yellow is purely a sender. And anyone like Jeff, who is green, is both a sender and a recipient, indicating the direction or the involvement in the communication. Also, the size of the circle and that someone is on screen here indicates the volume of email that they were involved in. And finally, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see there are differences in the thickness of lines of communication. The thickness of line indicates the volume of communication back and forth between 2 parties. So here we can see there were 14 emails opposed to just the one between Jeff and Christian. So let's zoom out a little bit. If I want to understand more directly who has Jeff been communicating with, I can simply double-click, And a flyout now shows me all of the individuals that he was communicating with and shows me the different counts. So I can quickly now even click on these people's names, and I'm selecting those explicit lines of communication. And if I were to press narrow, I would narrow down just to those particular emails that I've now selected. Where HYPERGRAPH equally becomes very powerful is the ability to see what I would call kind of the degrees of separation between people. So if you're dealing with communication-based data in a flat list, you only know whether someone talked to somebody else. When you see it in a visual form, you can see the kind of the intermediaries between people. So you'll see if I hover over Jeff here, Jeff has had no direct communication with Maya. However, there are intermediaries between the two that have communicated with both parties. And because of the nature of HYPERGRAPH letting me see those degrees of separation, it becomes very powerful in letting me know, have I identified the right custodians? Are the people that we've missed that we should expand our scope to? Equally, from within the HYPERGRAPH interface, we can very quickly apply filters. And I can narrow down to specific domains, into specific time ranges, and I can use any of the restrictions in the exploration technology that we have in regular lists now in this visual form. Equally within HYPERGRAPH, I can very quickly identify interesting information and tag it into the system for specific, pushing it out for review or running some of our other analytics and machine learning against it. So if I want to take these lines of communication, I could simply press, these are all relevant to case topic 1. And I could even have the system auto-batch that out for me, which we'll talk about more in a few moments. So it's a little bit about the investigation side of things using HYPERGRAPH. Of course, at any point, we can still jump straight back into our analysis view of the data and continue to slice and dice it in other ways. So that was a little bit about the new interface and a little bit about using both analytics and visual analytics to better explore and investigate the data. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Hal to talk about our second role for our demonstration.
Thanks, Neil. So let's talk about the next category, the reviewer. Again, a variety of people fulfill this role from time to time, but functionally the reviewer does have some universals no matter who's doing it. They're tasked with efficiency and with consistency. So the accuracy of what they do is quite important as well, not just how many documents per hour. There's a need to maintain focus and clarity, even as much of the task can be monotonous and often historically requires a lot of looking at irrelevant data. And typically, many interruptions in the workflow, lots of things will pop up that will drag on their productivity and force them to wait and revisit documents at a later time. So hopefully we're addressing some of those aspects with these features that I'll call out right now. And the first one is the new next-generation viewer that we've introduced with Axcelerate 5. As Neil had mentioned earlier, this is a zero-footprint viewer built in HTML5. There is no plugin required to download or install, and it works in any browser on any computer. So right there and then, one of the key aspects that people need to wait for and a logistical component of getting a large team up and running is just completely removed. It also has the latest technology for high-fidelity rendering, so near natives look really good and pull up quickly. Another aspect that is a big drag on reviewer productivity is redactions. As you identify aspects of documents that need to be redacted in near-native mode, historically there's a need to go through a workflow process for flagging them so that they can be tipped on a regular basis, and then you have to come back to them later and remember why they need to be redacted and what portions need to be redacted. And all of these tedious aspects have a real impact on review efficiency. And you're going to see when Neil takes you into this range of redaction capabilities that are very powerful and time-saving. And then finally, email analysis. Email thread detection is certainly not something that's new. However, the way that it works from product to product has been always quite varied and different. It's particularly a challenge when you need to use special tools outside the product in order to do this kind of processing so that then you can do effective email thread suppression. What we've done here is build state-of-the-art email thread suppression based on sophisticated analytics that are quite reliable in their results right into the platform with a display that doesn't leave any doubt about what your review workflow should be that follows. And I'll turn you back over to Neil.
Great, thanks, Al. So let's jump back over into our demo system, and now we're going to change roles and walk through some of those things that Hal just highlighted from the review aspect. So I'm now going to switch from analysis, and I'm now going to go into assignments. So a couple of key features that we've added into the product. First of all, you got a brief glimpse, as I was in the last user role, around automated batching. So now, simply taking a set of documents, whether they are from a global sample for predictive coding, whether they are from the results of an investigation, they can now be fully auto-batched by the system. You set up the parameters for your batching. An example, you could say batches of 500 documents. I want them to be batched by custodian, and I would like them to be smart batches that include families and threads, dupes and near dupes even. So not only have we significantly simplified and automated the batching process, but we've also significantly simplified the requirements for assigning and pulling batches as a reviewer. So as I've come to the assignments page now, what I see is all of the batches in the system that I currently have the ability to pull. We no longer need to directly assign batches to reviewers. Instead, we can review them to roles or teams. And so now, as a reviewer, I can simply come in and begin to pull my own batches. As we see at the top here, I was actually in the process of reviewing a batch for a global sample, which we'll see being used for predictive coding a little bit later on, and it's currently paused. So what I want to do is simply just proceed with that batch. Over on the left-hand side, what you'll see here is now all of my results that are part of the batch that I'm going to go through and review. In the center, you see a rendering of the document itself. And then over on the far right, you'll see we now have our tagging panel. Now, the document that I brought up here is a perfect example of why we saw the market needs to make significant improvements into the rendering of documents. While we can look at emails, and of course, seeing text on the screen is very simple, as we look at more complex documents like spreadsheets in a near-native view, or even worse, very technical engineering diagrams, how do we make it easy to be able to see the text on screen? Well, by us now rendering purely into this new SVG format that gives us kind of very high fidelity rendering, you'll notice I can continue to zoom in on a document and see very granular rendition of all of the text, no matter how far I zoom in. So it could be an engineering diagram. I need to quickly zoom in and see the title block, and I can do that with ease. So that's a little bit about the document rendering capabilities. If we look a little bit further down the left-hand side, you'll see this new card view is designed to maximize screen real estate within the application and giving me the key metadata in the documents that I have coming up as I walk through my particular batch for review. Now you'll see we've moved across to a Word document here. We have a very high fidelity rendering of that also. And as we look over on the right-hand panel, you'll see now I can begin to code this document. So I can decide that this is responsive, and it's responsive here to case topic 1. I could put some additional details in here, but I won't. What I want to do now is simply just say, save and next, take me through to the next document. This actually is an embedding here, not one we necessarily want to focus in on. And now that I've tagged a document, what you'll notice is down in the right-hand side here, I've got something called one-click tags. What this allows me to do is very quickly tag documents using kind of tagging templates or predefined sets of tags. So the idea being, instead of me having to go through and check all of these particular boxes, if I instead were to hover over number 1, this is automatically going to flag this document as responsive. If we were to hover over number 3, it will flag it as responsive. It will also put a privilege flag on it. If we hover over number 2, it will flag this as non-responsive, as well as if the template included the many different tags going down that right-hand side. The benefit of this is not only does it allow me to apply a predefined set of tags, but it allows me to quickly make minor modifications if I need to. So I can decide that this is also a hot document, let's say. You'll also notice there is an L tag. And what this will do is apply the last set of tags that I created while I was proceeding through my review. So the idea of one-click tags over here was to rapidly improve the tagging process and allow us to become a lot smarter in the way that we apply tags. So while I still have this document up, what I want to do is switch over and perform some redactions. So as I switch into redaction mode, the first thing to bring to everyone's attention is I have not had to TIFF this document. So we can now apply redactions to the near-native document right inside of Axcelerate 5. This is huge from both a time and a cost point of view, meaning we really now would only need to TIFF the document at the point of doing a production. It also means that we can now create intelligent redactions, as Hal had mentioned. So of course we can still redact in the more traditional way, which is drawing over text and putting a redaction on them. However, as I mentioned, we can make these much more smart. So as I click on my text tool, let's decide that salt marsh is a term that needs to be redacted in this document. You'll see as I draw over it and let go, every occurrence of salt marsh has now been redacted throughout the document. Equally, we can search for particular terms or phrases and have them redact throughout the document. An example of this could be ISO is a term that needs to be redacted in green in this document. And the system is now telling me it has now redacted 16 occurrences of the term ISO throughout this document. And here you can see 2 of them here on page 1. If I were to pull out my page view, you'll also see there is now an exclamation mark on each page indicating to me which pages have now got redactions on them. Now we've taken this even further, which is if we can now understand the makeup of a document and we can identify data within it for redaction purposes, let's see how much of that we could automate. So with a single click, I can now analyze this document for phone numbers, socials, driver's license numbers, and various credit cards, and have the system auto-redact it for me. And you'll see as I press that, in essence, it gives me an audit saying, in this one, no credit cards, no socials, and so on, but it did find 2 phone numbers. And again, you'll see if we now scroll down through this document, here is a phone number that's now been auto-redacted by the system. Now, these are the ones that we've built in out of the box, but of course we can expand this to others. So there may be specific account numbers, there may be specific customer numbers. This can be adapted to be able to identify those particular terms or sequences as well. So the key things here is huge improvement to the whole viewing experience, brand new document viewer that is 0 footprint and we believe second to none in the industry, and really revolutionary approach to redactions without the need to TIFF and the ability to make them intelligent and be able to auto-redact varying components throughout a document. So with that, we're going to jump back over. I'm going to switch back to Hal, and he's going to talk a little bit about our third role.
Thanks, Neil. So we'll move on now to our final role, the case manager. Responsibilities of the person put in charge of case management include advising on review workflows, from predictive coding to manual review to all the hybrid versions in between, case setup and administration, figuring out how to work with the users and interacting with the service provider on a larger matter. And this is someone who's tasked with overall review efficiency, so interacting regularly with the reviewers to try to make sure things are moving along swimmingly. A number of capabilities that are pertinent to this user. The first is actually something Neil just covered, which is the ability to control batches. Being able to pull your own batch now makes life a little bit easier for the person in that role, as you've seen. We'll circle back to end-of-branch email analysis, which lets this case manager advise the review team on strategies so that they don't have to look at every aspect of the emails as they're conducting review. Now, let's move on for a moment to predictive coding. Of course, it wouldn't be a recommended presentation if we didn't spend some time on predictive coding. We're well known for the innovations we've introduced in predictive coding, and what we're looking at here demonstrates the value that our users have been receiving from that. I know it looks a bit like the graphic EQ on a high-end sound system, but what we're actually looking at there is the results from a random sample of 40 cases of the hundreds that we've managed to see what range of savings are the users seeing from predictive coding being applied. And what we found is really compelling. Over 90% of data being computer reviewed as non-responsive and not requiring human review. And then we have results in terms of responsiveness rates on what is reviewed. And that turns into really massive cost savings on a particular matter. For example, in this particular case study, over 3 million documents, only 5% needed to be reviewed at a cost savings compared to manual review of over $1.5 million. So we have the metrics to demonstrate the massive impact that predictive coding can bring to matters even of different sizes, not just the massive ones and those that have fast turnarounds, but even in many cases on mid-sized matters. It can be really applied to great benefit and great use. But one of the challenges of leveraging all this power of predictive coding, we found, has been understanding the process. We all know that there's a lot of mythology out there about how predictive coding works, a lot of misunderstanding about the aspects of it. And so the burden really is on us to lead the way in transparency, to educate the users and to make it easier to see where you are at any given time. What is the goal that you're getting to? What do you anticipate the relevancy is? How much have you found? How much is left? And to make everyone feel much more confident and control, once again, confident rather about the process, and to feel in control of how they're using this technology in the review. So the new predictive coding dashboard that Neil will show you is a really big step forward in terms of demystifying this process.
Great, thanks, Al. So I think what would be really useful for us to touch on right now is, from a case management point of view, what are some of the key things in the system that makes my life easier? But then equally, what can we see in the system for being able to better answer questions when they come down the pipe? So where I think a good place to start will actually be is around the email end-of-branch analysis. So what I've done here is now jumped over back into the system, and I've pulled up an example of an email thread. And what you'll see here is now there are 6 items within this email thread. And you'll notice that 2 of these have got a red square against them. And that red square is indicating to me that these are what we call end of branch. So the system has been able to identify that only these 2 items have truly unique content, and the other 4 emails that you see in this thread are basically duplicates of what is contained within those 2 unique end of branch items. So from a case management point of view, case administration, we can actually configure the system to restrict it even only just showing end of branch. So even from a data analysis or from a review point of view, we can restrict the visibility here, and we've seen that enabling this feature can actually reduce review volumes by 30+% by suppressing or hiding these end-of-branch emails. So we see this as a very key feature within Accelerate 5 to be able to significantly reduce the review volume. So with that, I'm now going to jump over to workflow. So workflow is kind of the main page where I can really manage everything that's going on within my system from a review point of view. First thing you'll see at the top here are samples. So when we are utilizing predictive coding, or even if we are just using this technology for review prioritization, creating random samples is a very powerful and beneficial function within the system. Creating a sample will give us a baseline statistical estimate of the number of documents that are responsive to a particular issue or to the entire case. As I expand into samples, I can see from a management point of view that so far 2 samples have been generated within the system. I can get some stats back around their review levels and the number of documents within them. And equally, if we move down, I can see also within this current case there are 2 issues that we are tracking. Case topic 1 here, if we expand down into that, I can see some of the activity that has taken place, which was around doing some targeted document identification or investigation, the kind of activities that would be conducted by that subject matter expert where we started. And I can see the number of documents that were discovered and that these were pushed out for review. Now, as these items in here are being created, from a case administration point of view, you'll be able to see some of the really powerful automation. What I can tell the system is for case topic 1, which for today's demo was that issue of price fixing, I'm trying to push things to complete first pass review. I've created a sample that I would like to tie to that issue to help me understand the estimated responsiveness for that issue. I've also enabled predictive coding, which is as simple as a checkbox. And then I can ask the system whether I'd like it to fully batch any predictive coding suggestions that come through, if I'd like it to fully batch any samples that we generate for the issue, and if I'd like it to fully batch any saved sets, in essence, the results of that targeted document identification. What this will now do is simply as we discover data, it will then automate that batching process, automate the assignments, and then simply as reviewers go through and review the batches, we can then proceed through the review itself with ease. So after setting up these parameters, what else has happened in the case? Well, from generating these targeted documents and performing a sample, the system has now been able to progress through various iterations of predictive coding, all of which is tracked and managed in this really easy-to-use interface within workflows. So if I come here for managing it, what can we do with this data to better present it and help me understand and answer some of those previously much more difficult questions, such as, how much data is there for price fixing? How much have we found? When are we going to be done? And as Hal mentioned, to create transparency and visibility into that process, we've created a series of dashboards. So as I switch over into my predictive coding dashboard, you'll see now we are sitting here on our dashboard for case topic 1, our price fixing dashboard. What I see on screen is that the system is telling me now we have found 93.33% of the content responsive to this issue. And we've achieved that with 17.46% of the entire document corpus having been looked at by human reviewers. How did we get to that progress metric? Well, let's come over here to our detailed breakdown of review metrics. What I see here is now the data that we were managing through our workflow interface presented in a very logical way. It's showing me the progression of the review, which is we started with a global sample. That global sample was 2,348 documents. It's been completely reviewed, and it had a confirmation rate or responsive rate of 10.22%. What that gave us is our baseline estimation that we see over here on our green line. When this sample was generated, the outcome was 95% with a plus or minus of 2%. So it's basically, it's plus or minus 2% north and south of that line. What you'll see is that it's estimated with a fade. It's not actually coming through the GoToMeeting software. But basically, it's showing me this interval range of estimated responsiveness for this particular issue. Then if we jump back over to review metrics, we have been able to identify documents manually through targeted document identification. That led us to find 4,200 results that were fully reviewed, and we got a 40% confirmation rate from that. That confirmation rate, plus the items we found in the sample, have now acted as our initial input set or seed set of documents to perform predictive coding training. So that allowed us to run this predictive coding iteration. This is where the system now took those documents, analyzed them, and is now suggesting other documents that it believes to be similar to those. From there, it's found 1,780 documents. Those have been 100% reviewed, and that was an almost 80% confirmation rate. That allowed us to run another iteration that suggested 3,600, which gave us an 85% confirmation rate. And all of this progress is now tracked on the blue line. So it almost becomes the gamification of e-discovery review. The goal of the game is to make the blue line get as close to as possible the green line and then plateau. So what we can see is very quickly, within 5 to 6 iterations, we found basically 13,000 responsive items. And we'll see at this point my line is now plateaued. So this now indicates to me that the engine is no longer producing responsive content. And the next logical step will be what you see here, which is to run a final validation sample. This allows us to confirm, does it appear with a level of that we have found all the documents responsive to this issue. And if we click on this, you'll see of that sample, we had 2,300 results. It's been completely reviewed, and there were only 2 more responsive items found, which gave us a confirmation rate of 0.09. Now, dependent on what has been agreed in the case, this could mean at this point this is reasonable where we can stop, or of course we could run another iteration. We could proceed with the review and then run another QC at a later point. Our goal here is to visually produce the data in a very easy way, easy form to understand, to help give guidance into the progress of the review. So that was really the main things from a demonstration point of view. I would like to bring to everyone's attention a target, which is if you go to recommend.com/ediscovery, You will get access to all of our collaterals and materials supporting both Axcelerate 5 and our entire eDiscovery business. You can also reach out to sales@recommind.com. We're very, very excited and proud of this release, and we are very excited for you all to be able to get in there and use it. So if there are any other follow-ups, please reach out to the different mechanisms we've discussed, and we really appreciate your time today in joining this webinar. Thank you.